Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and welcome to another episode of ISTJ Info Dumping, the show where we try to teach you how to communicate with an ISTJ effectively so that miscommunication doesn't happen, which is one of the ISTJ's biggest pet peeves. So try to really pay attention to these info dumping episodes if you can. Today I thought it would be better to show you guys practical examples of what I'm talking about rather than just talking and hoping that you'll remember everything I say. So in case you're a visual learner, I've got 3 examples of video games that I found that completely fail to immerse an ISTJ in philosophical discussion, kinda sorta get it, and really gets it. I figured 3 is a good number because then I won't overwhelm you guys and this video won't be stupid long. So I'll give my commentary, of course. It would be silly of me if I just played the clips, but hopefully after you see these, you'll get a better understanding of how to talk about deep and what if and big picture scenarios to an ISTJ without overwhelming them. So without further ado, let's look at the worst way to tell a philosophical story / discussion to an ISTJ. This first video game I'm going to show is called Florence. Now, I haven't actually played this game, so obviously this is someone else's footage, but I don't feel like I need to because it's basically just a story that has interactive elements that the developers can say, see, we know how to make games. Basically, the gist of the story is that Florence is a really lonely girl, and eventually she meets this really cool guy, and they get together, and they get married, but then eventually they have a fight, and they break up. Now, this sounds like kind of a cliche love story, and it kind of is, but one thing that makes it especially hard for me to bear is that there's no dialogue. And so you're asked to completely fill in the blanks about why did they fall in love in the first place? Is there a reason for why they're all lovey-dovey? Also, why is it that they eventually broke up and moved out? What did Florence do to get over him? There's a lot of things left to the imagination, and it doesn't do well because there's so many what if questions that the ISTJ is asking that can never be answered. Now, admittedly, the intuitive types, especially the intuitive feeling types, would probably love a game like Florence because the music is very, like, it's trying to evoke a lot of emotions in you, and they would probably love to fill in the blanks themselves, but that's not really something ISTJs enjoy. So if you're trying to tell a captivating story, or if you're trying to talk about something that you're passionate about, try to get as many of the details as accurate as possible. Otherwise, the ISTJ is just gonna be like, say what? Stop confusing me and talk English. For this next clip, I'm gonna let the scene play out in its entirety as opposed to talking through it because there's voice acting, for one, and for two, I think it's better that you absorb what the voice actors are saying before you absorb what I'm saying, because that could be just way too hectic. So I feel like this is the middle ground scene because there is a dominant sensing type among the 3 characters, and you'll be able to very quickly identify which one it is. Admittedly, he's not an ISTJ, but he's still a dominant sensor, so he still has that what the heck moment. So that's why this scene is okay in my book. So after we're done watching it, then I'll explain further how you don't want to be like Akane, but you want to be a bit closer to what Junpei is.
If all dice show a 1 on the side facing up, all players win. The door will then unlock. And however, if even a single die does not display a 1, everyone in the room.
Huh?
No way! Oh, yes! Yes! Hell yeah! We're alive! We're actually alive! Yeah! Hey! Why are the 2 of you just standing there? Guys, it's 1/216. We just got a miracle.
Yeah. You're right.
I just can't believe it.
We're alive, right?
Of course we're alive. What, do I look like a ghost to you? Or an undead zombie? If I was, then my heart wouldn't be pounding a mile a minute right now. Come on, let's blow this popsicle stand. We definitely gotta have a toast back in the lounge. Come on! What are you doing? Hurry up!
Nothing beats a cold one after surviving a close call.
Come on! You guys should join me.
Sorry. I'll pass.
I'm really not in the mood for it.
For real? Are you serious?
Hey, are you already drunk?
Yeah, I am! Drunk on life! We just experienced the miracle of hitting 1/216th odds. 0.46%, guys! Come on! Let's use the remaining time we have to savor this awesome moment.
A miracle, huh? It definitely would be. If it happened on the first try.
Guys, what are you saying? We only threw the dice once, right?
Are you sure about that? Maybe we just don't remember. And in reality, we've rolled the dice over and over again.
Huh?
If we threw them 3 times, the probability would be 72-1. I wouldn't really call those odds a miracle.
Oh, so what? Does that really matter? I'll say it again. We've only gone and thrown the dice once. Once. Right, Carlos?
Yeah, that's true. What are you trying to say, Akane?
Carlos, let's say you were going to roll 10 dice all at the same time. So, do you think you'd end up with all of them displaying a 1?
Of course not. It's impossible.
Right. The probability is 60,466,176 to 1, but that's essentially impossible. If you tried 60,466,176 times, however, what would happen?
The likelihood of all of them being 1 is...
Not so much of an impossibility, right? I'll give you another example. Junpei, if 2 to the 4th power, 16 people, compete in a rock, paper, scissors tournament, how many matches are needed before a winner can be determined?
Why are you talking about...
Just answer the question.
Really? Okay, first, the 16 narrow down to 8. Then 8 to 4 and 4 to 2. After the final round, 1 person's left standing, so... a total of 4?
So, what would happen if 2 to the 100 did the same thing?
It'd be 100.
And how confident do you feel about winning this tournament, Junpei?
I'm not, obviously. You're out of the competition after you lose just 1 match. You'd have to win 100 rounds straight to win.
But someone will do it and win, right? A victor who wins 100 matches without losing one will exist. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
The person who won. But only because of circumstance. I mean, more or less.
Well, duh, but why are you...
It may be obvious, but it's important. The one who lives on does so due to circumstance.
The anthropic principle.
Oh, you've heard of it.
Yeah, it's connected to the many worlds and multiverse theories.
The hell are you...
This universe is a little too well suited for human beings. That principle explains why. They say, for example, that if Jupiter was just a bit smaller, the Earth likely wouldn't have even formed. That's not the only instance either. There are physical constants throughout the universe. But if even one had changed the tiniest bit, humanity wouldn't have been created at all.
But anyone can see we do actually exist.
And that's exactly my point. We exist. Therefore, we know that we exist. Perhaps somewhere in reality there are countless universes devoid of humanity where the idea of humans didn't even begin. But it isn't possible to know if those other universes exist or not. That's because there are no human beings to observe within them. The only universe we can measure is our own. Therefore, this is the universe we exist in.
Wait, are you talking about tautology?
1 + 1 = 2 is a form of tautology also, right? The left and right sides of the equation say the same thing.
That's sophistry.
Are you sure?
Anyway, I get what you're trying to say, Akane. Maybe, somewhere in this world, there are an infinite number of histories where we were executed by the Gatling guns. But we don't know if those histories really exist. Basically, because we're dead in those histories. The dead can't observe the world. Only those who are still alive can do that. Therefore, we exist here, now.
The opposite of what I just explained could be true as well. The universe could be not meant for humanity. Maybe there's one not limited by gravity, where they travel faster than light. You can't say for sure such a universe doesn't exist. If it does, then we could expect that aliens would be interacting together within it.
Okay, now that sounds like fun.
Maybe that was the universe God had intended in the first place. And this one is a failure.
So, we exist in the universe God abandoned, huh?
What's the matter?
You guys talking like this, I don't feel like drinking anymore.
So you guys probably guessed by now that the personality types of the three characters are Junpei is an ESTP, Akane, the girl, is an INFJ, and Carlos, the guy with the slicked back blonde hair, is an ENFJ. Some people think he's ESFJ, but I'm leaning more towards the N because he could kind of grasp what Akane was saying, even though it took him a while to get to that point. So the reason why this scene works all right is because you've got a censor in there that's the voice of reason and saying like, come on guys, does it really matter if there are alternate universes where we lost the coin toss? Let's just celebrate our victory and stop speculating. The problem is that Akane didn't notice Junpei's comfort and she just kept blabbing on and on and on about the what-ifs of the universe. And that would just make an ISTJ miserable if they had to contemplate so many possible choices that could have been had they made a better decision. What if, for example, I chose not to spend 10 cents at the grocery store? Oh no, could that have made me marry a different woman? It just seems a bit much. And ISTJs prefer to speculate on the what ifs before they happen. Like, if I don't plan ahead for this car trip, what if I get into an accident kind of thing. So if you want to talk about possibilities, make it likely possibilities as opposed to something so far-fetched like what if aliens exist. Maybe talk about things like what if you and I were to go on a date? What if we were to maybe not walk to the park for our daily routine? Stuff that the ISTJ could feasibly say, okay, I kind of get it. But we're about to get into the good example of how to talk about philosophical and what if conversations with an ISTJ, so stay tight and hope Monica's deadpan stare doesn't completely freak you out. The final clip I have to show you guys is from Doki Doki Literature Club. I figured it's a little bit easier to talk over this one than the previous because there's no voice acting in this scene. So it makes it a little bit easier to read and listen at the same time, assuming you want to read this and not just discover it for yourselves. I don't exactly condone of Monica's methods for how we got to this scene, as she did some pretty crazy stuff to ensure that you guys would be dating. But one thing that I really like about Monica is her communication style. Throughout this time, Monica has a whole bunch of monologues about what she thinks about life and how she thinks maybe society could change. But she's doing it in a very pragmatic, realistic way. And she's not afraid to just call out the stupidity of certain societal trends. And sometimes she even pokes fun of gaming in general. Like, she'll just say, oh, wow, this is such a tacky romance game, and these are such cliche things to do and say. And this is really refreshing for me because a lot of people tend to do what's called tiptoeing on ice, where they really think about, like, oh, I better not say this, and I better not say this, and I better just keep this hinting. Whereas Monica, she doesn't really have a filter whatsoever. She sees reality as more objective, and she doesn't try to shy away from just calling things out. In fact, a couple of things that aren't shown in this clip are, if you happen to be streaming this game, Monica will call you out for recording her without asking her permission and then do a jump scare to show her dissatisfaction. And if the name of the character you're playing as is different than the name of your profile, Monica will insist on calling you by your actual profile name. So even that, Monica's just not going to tolerate any people lying or trying to pretend that they're someone that they're not. She expects you to fully grasp what reality is, what gaming is, and to a certain extent, maybe this is a bit cold and uncallous, but she also expects you not to be upset that the other characters in the game are dead because it's a game. Like, do you cry every time a unit dies in Fire Emblem when it's just a generic enemy unit? Do you cry whenever you squash a bug? There are certain standards and hypocritical values that some people have, and Monica's trying to say, okay, really stop to think about it. It's a pixelated character following code. Now, again, some people, especially in the feeling type category, are probably going to find Monica's advice scandalous. Like, why on earth would you say not to feel sorry for characters that you're attached to? But remember, reality isn't a game. Reality is, well, reality. And Monica presents what ifs in a realistic scenario. Like, why is it that so many people go to college when they don't have a clue what they want? What if the people that go to college are the people that would really make something out of college? So in other words, Monica presents what ifs in a realistic scenario, like I've been saying. So even though I don't want you guys to be exactly like Monica, far from it, I think Monica's kind of a little bit of a psycho in some senses. But at the very least, if you want to talk like Monica does in these segments, that would make this ISTJ feel very special and honored, and I would feel like you guys actually understand my brain. So some of you that aren't hardcore gamers like me might have to take these clips with kind of a grain of salt per se. Like, obviously video games aren't 100% effective at communicating real-world ideas, and to a certain extent everything is all coding and pre-programming as opposed to conversations in real life where they're a little bit more free-flowing and a little bit more on the spot. Like, even if you want to perfectly script what you're going to say to someone, you also don't really know what the other person's going to say in response. Whereas everything that Junpei and Akane and Carlos were saying, for example, was all planned by the scenario writer. So there wasn't a whole lot of ums and pausing and stuff that happens in a real-world conversation. The reason I'm showing you guys this is because you might have gotten the impression from previous info dumping episodes that you shouldn't talk about philosophy or what ifs or possibilities or the big picture at all when you're talking to ISTJs. And I certainly don't think that is a very realistic thing to do. Even if I personally would be happy if you did that, life isn't all about me. I'm not the only one living, And I'm sure you intuitive types are probably like, oh, come on, can't you bend a little? I'm bending for you. So that's why I offered these clips as a way of possibly having a middle ground. That, yes, you can talk about what you want to talk about. I don't want to make it so that you feel like you can't talk about things that you're passionate about. But I also think that relationships of any kind, platonic or romantic, need to be a two-way street. And so both parties have to be willing to bend a little bit. Now, I don't know what your personality type is, but I do know what mine is. And those are my boundaries, and I'm pretty sure every other ISTJ will at least somewhat agree with me. Again, every ISTJ is different. Some of them will either like or not like the games that I showed. But I think generally speaking, we agree that trying to talk about the big picture is very hard for us, but it's not impossible. Intuition may be our fourth function, but it's not in the shadow function. So it means we're definitely capable of it. We just have a very, 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 very limited grasp on the big picture and thinking ahead. So I hope that helped. If I somehow wasn't clear enough in all of that, let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about the future of ISTJ conversations. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's hope the next time we talk about the big picture, it actually makes sense. Bye!